This is Passepartout, People and Places, brought to you by Jules Verne, taking you around the world, sharing memories and introducing you to the people at the heart of everything we do. I'm Abby, and in this series I'll be delving into past adventures, inside stories, future journeys, inspiring you to discover the wonders of the world. Hello. In this episode, we're going to speak to somebody who's very close to our hearts here at Jules Verne, and that is our Managing Director, Francis Torrilla. Francis has travelled all over the world. He's seen some amazing sights and met some wonderful people, and he's going to share some of his favourite experiences and memories with us on this episode today. Francis has travelled not only as the Managing Director of many travel businesses, but he's also travelled as a father, a friend, a husband. And in this episode, he's going to talk to us about his experiences, not only as a solo traveller, backpacking his way through Europe, but also travelling with his family and the experiences that they've shared together, and travelling with his wife too. We hope you enjoy this episode and listen out to some of the fantastic destinations that Francis recommends. Hello, Francis.
Hi, Abby. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. Very well.
Thank you for joining me in Jules Verne's new podcast room. This is exciting.
Lovely, actually. It's very good.
I know, it's very cosy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's lovely. So, for those of you who are new to Jules Verne's podcast, we are taking people around the world in the form of a podcast medium. We're going to be talking about our favourite destinations, the places that have captured our hearts the most, and our best travel experiences, really. So, Francis, how long have you been travelling? When was your first travel moment that you can think of?
Well, I was born and grew up in Gibraltar, actually. But I left there in 1982 to go backpacking.
Wow.
That was the thing at the time. And so I backpacked, actually, for those that know a bit of history about Gibraltar, the border with Spain only opened in 82. So that was the opportune moment to leave, really. So I went through Spain and then backpacked all the way to Israel, which was lovely, and joined a kibbutz, which was, again, another very 80s thing to do.
So backpacking, was this, traditional hitchhiking backpacking like you see in the old 80s movies?
Partly it was, partly, I got coaches or there was a bus called the Magic Bus, and you got the bus from Athens to London, Victoria.
Wow.
And it was like 2 nights on it. So I only did it once. So that gives you an idea of how bad it was.
So once was enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Magic Bus. I like the sound of that. Could that be something that we could reintroduce, do you think? The Magic
It was
Bus.
only like £6 or something, so it was unbelievable. So it was excellent value, but it was pretty painful.
So before that, then, that was kind of the moment where you realised that travelling that's where you wanted to explore, and realise that was your,
Yeah, when I left school, I went into banking, and I did about 5 years with Barclays Bank, and I realised really that this isn't for me.
Yeah.
It's a safe job. And all the rest of it, but it just wasn't for me, and I didn't know what to do, and that's really why I thought, well, I'll just go travelling.
Yeah.
And I haven't turned back since.
Amazing. So Israel was where you ended up on your first travelling experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, although I did work in like things like the market in Rome and that, but that was only to get enough money to move on to the next place. And in Israel, I was there for about 5 months actually. Wow. Really enjoyed it.
Amazing. So for you then, what kind of, you've landed in Israel, you've done your 80s backpacking, you've been on the Magic Bus, it was, really fun. You're done with Barclays Bank. What was next? What did you then do?
Well, I went back home to Gibraltar then at the time, and I thought I'd work this summer, which I did. And then I thought I'd move to London. Actually, I debated whether London or New York. I was very much into cities then. Okay. I was only in my 20s. And I thought London or New York. I'd been to New York a couple of times and to London a few more. But London won.
We're glad for that.
So am I, actually, because I do love London.
Yeah.
And then, it was total fluke. When I arrived in London in 1984, I started working as a night security guard. mainly because I needed a job straight away, and that was advertised on the Evening Standard.
Wow.
And so I started virtually next day or 2 days after I arrived. And then, as it happens, I do have family in London as well, and my cousin's husband worked for BT at the time, and he was putting the phone systems in for this travel company in Notting Hill Gate, and he said to me, they're recruiting. So I just did my CV, sent it through, and I got a job with them.
And that's how you became managing director of the UK specialist division of Dirturistic.
Absolutely, yeah.
So a long journey.
A long journey there, but
an amazing journey.
Yeah, totally.
So you've obviously, like we've said, you've been travelling since the 80s and you've enjoyed it and things, but it's a very different kind of travelling that you do now compared to what you did when you were first backpacking. So obviously you are
a few more comforts now.
Comforts, exactly. And you do have the pick of some of the best UK operators, because we are, well, I'm biased, but I think we're one of the best operators for tours, but you also have other companies within the business as well. But what's been your top moment? Has there been, a top moment where you've seen a certain animal or,
I think the top moment, it's a difficult, I do love Africa.
Yeah.
I love Africa from Egypt all the way to Cape Town. I think it's a fantastic continent, and it's a continent, I think, that really inspires you, when you're there, to think about, about everything, not just work-wise, but on a personal level. And so I think most countries in Africa, I think, have something to offer us. For me, I suppose one of the best experience was when I first went to Governors in the Masai Mara. It was a family holiday, and I had to convince my wife that safari was right for all of us, including the children. The children were young at the time, and there was malaria tablets and all of this, and it was all maybe a bit too much. But we did it, and we went with another family actually, which was also good. We got to Governors, and it's just wonderful. There are more luxurious places to go to, not only in Kenya but in Africa. But for me, Governors gets it just right, because it's in the right spot. The tents are comfortable. The game viewing at any time of the year is fantastic. Having said that, if you can go during the migration, then obviously do. But it's just, I think it's incomparable, really, to anywhere else, especially if you've never been to Africa. Like, definitely for a first safari, I think Kenya takes some beating.
Definitely. And I like the way that you had to convince your lovely wife to go with you. Was she happy at the end of the holiday? She
loved it. And, and the kids did. Even when we get round the dinner table and we start talking about holidays, and they've been very fortunate, obviously. We nearly always come back to that holiday, that safari in Kenya. That is still, and that was in 2007, I think. But that is still very much up there, as one of the top family holidays that we've had. We try to do about every 4 years, one holiday together, all of us as families, a family, and we love it. We love traveling, and we like each other's company. So we're quite fortunate, really.
Well, that is good, because people might not know. So you're married to your lovely wife, and you've got 3 children. You've got 2 girls and a boy.
Yeah, I've got twin girls in their late 20s, and my son who's in his early 30s. Yeah.
And they have travelled a lot with you as well, haven't you? You do a lot of things as a family, like you said.
Yeah, we do. We've always been quite close as a family. They do travel themselves as well, independently. But as I said before, every few years. Generally, it works out about every 4 years. And I don't think that was planned. It's just the way it's happened. We try to do a holiday together. We did one actually to India.
Wow.
And that was, I think, for a big birthday. I can't remember if it was for Fiona, my wife, or for me, but it was a big birthday. And that was fantastic. I'd been to India in business, but we'd never been to India on holiday. And it is different, whatever people think. And, it was wonderful.
So India, let's talk about India. So I've been to India. I was very lucky that I went with Jules Verne, and that was my first experience. And like you said, it's not what you think it's going to be at all. It touches all the senses, everything,
all of them,
all of the senses, but in such a romantic way, I think. And I mean, For you, was there a highlight? India's so vast and there's so much stuff. Was there a highlight from that particular trip, a moment you took away and thought, wow, that stayed with me?
Actually, what made the biggest impact on me, and I would never have thought that I would say this, was the Taj Mahal. I thought I have seen so many pictures and models and souvenirs about the Taj Mahal everywhere that I thought, well, it's somewhere you have to go to. But I wasn't expecting to be wowed. And when you go through the archway on the way in and the Taj Mahal is there, and that's when you realize, okay, I know what all the fuss is about.
Yeah.
Because it is an unbelievable feeling. I think, when you first see, now there are beautiful palaces all throughout India, in Jaipur and Fatehpur Sikri, and, there's some fantastic places. But to me, the Taj Mahal, maybe it's because I wasn't expecting anything from it, probably had the biggest impact.
Yeah, I remember we went at sunrise, and I remember being one of the first people through the archway and seeing it and knowing that he built that for love as well. And I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to be one of the wives that wasn't the favourite, that didn't get the Taj Mahal. I think I would have probably had a bit of a bee in my bonnet about that. But you're right. A lot of people say, well, I've seen it and it's another palace, or it's another, and it's not. It's so much more.
It is. And then I suppose you've got the southern India, which is very different. Very different to northern India, because obviously North India was the Mughals, so there's a lot of Islamic influence in it. You don't get that in the south. It's more Hindu temples, and then the lushness, and greenery, obviously, because it's more tropical. So it's totally different. Actually, it's more akin to Sri Lanka, I think, southern India, than to northern India.
Yeah, it's very different, isn't it, with India? I think we sort of think of the Golden Triangle as one, as is India, but like you said, there's so much more. The backwaters, Kerala, things like that. People don't necessarily think on their first visit to go to those areas, but I think you get so much from India. Like with Africa, you get a lot from Africa. So thinking about Africa again, we're kind of moving around the globe at this point. You said Egypt earlier. So tell me about your experiences with Egypt.
I love Cairo.
Okay.
Despite it being crazy and busy and polluted and everything else that it is, I think it's a fantastic city. It's got great history. Obviously, it has the pyramids, but not just the pyramids. And I think if you have time, or if you build in time, try to visit some of the mosques in Cairo. My favorite building in Cairo, actually, is not one from the Egyptians or the ancient Egyptians. It's a mosque.
Okay.
It's the Hassan Mosque. And madrasa, and it's just below the citadel, and I think it's a fantastic building. It's one of those things like with the Taj Mahal. I remember when I first went in, just walking in, and you walk in through like a vaulted, like a small vaulted tunnel, and then you come into this big open courtyard, and you see, like, if you will, the equivalent of the altar. In the mosque, and it's just fantastic. It's just so moving. Wow. And I remember thinking, God, this place is wonderful. You feel as you feel with some churches, and I don't believe I'm that religious a person, but you sometimes walk into a building, be it a church or a mosque, and you feel, okay, this feels holy. And that's the feeling I got.
It's an energy, isn't it?
There's something that you feel, there's something here, whether it's the quietness, but there is something that you think, okay, this is slightly different.
And that was the place.
And that was the place in Egypt, actually. Now, having said that, the Nile is fantastic. And I don't think you can go to Egypt without doing the Nile, or at least a part of the Nile, and all the temples from it. I
mean, I'm very lucky. I've just come back from Egypt. I didn't get to visit the mosque, so now I feel like I need to go back because I feel like I've missed something. But Cairo was very interesting. I think I said at one point to our driver, I've been in the backseat of many cars in many destinations, and Cairo is probably the one where I've never seen driving like it. It's incredibly crazy, but the hustle and the bustle, and it's sort of a mix, isn't it, between old and new and cosmopolitan and tradition, and it's just this influx of
and run down and unbuilt
and half built and half demolished. Yeah. But talking about building in Egypt, we have the new Egyptian museum being built.
I can't wait.
It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I've heard through sources that it's going to take at least 7 days to explore everything that's within there, and I think it will be.
It'll be great. Especially to be able to see all of Tutankhamun's, find everything they found in the tomb of Tutankhamun, if you will, in the one place, because they never had the room to exhibit it. So I think it'll be great, actually. One of the things that got me into Egypt, actually, was going back to when I lived in Gibraltar and I was about 11. We did a school trip in 1972 to London.
Wow.
And part of that school trip was to visit Tutankhamun's mask that was visiting in London at the time at the British Museum. So that, I suppose, sowed the seed of Egypt,
Yes.
In me.
It does excite the inner child in all of us, doesn't it? It
yeah.
really does, because you do learn about these things at school. I mean, like you said, you learnt about it at school, and I learnt about it at school, and I think, my nieces will probably learn about it in school.
And you got the biblical element, of Moses and all that. So there is something in all of us, if you will, that links us to Egypt.
And it's such an important part of history as well. It really does touch on absolutely everything. But I think this year is a very exciting time for Egypt, and I think it'll be a very exciting time to visit Egypt once that museum's open. I think we're all keeping our fingers crossed.
They're hoping September, maybe sometime between September and November, but we'll see.
We'll
all be queuing up together.
Oh, definitely. We'll definitely be queuing for our tickets for that. So let's stick with Africa. Where else in the continent of Africa sort of, again, has left a really good impression on you?
Ethiopia.
Okay.
Probably. And Ethiopia, because it's very different. It feels like Africa, and yet it doesn't. And I think it's because it's Christian, it's Coptic predominantly. And it just has a totally different sense to it. Even Addis Ababa, the capital, which apparently has the largest open market in the country, in the world, in Africa, actually, in the continent. But it just felt so different when you go, especially we went on a flight up to Lalibela to see some of these rock-hewn churches. And they're just stunning, and you just think, how did they do this?
Yeah.
How on earth did they do this? And so it's a wonderful, and especially because all I'd heard about Ethiopia really was about the famine in the 80s. So to go, and I went, I can't remember, it was in the early 2000s. And to see somewhere, that was thriving, at the time, I thought, okay, this is a different place to visit. So if you still want to go to Africa, but want to see something slightly different, then Ethiopia is definitely the one.
Okay, we'll bear that in mind, definitely.
Yeah.
I think people do still think of the famine, don't they? But actually, most of the people in Ethiopia now that probably work in tourism and hotels probably weren't even born when that happened.
When we had those...
when we were having to raise money and things like that. So it's definitely somewhere... I think that's somewhere on my bucket list to go, for sure. So for me, I would say what resonates with me is Zimbabwe, because I used to live there. So I'm probably a little bit biased, but I know that you've been to Zimbabwe as well.
I have.
So I have a question to ask you, and I will ask this question to all of our guests on our future podcast. We've talked about lots of places already, and we know you've travelled to far more than you've said. But from everywhere you've been in the whole world, where has captured your heart the most?
I think it would have to be Victoria Falls.
So tell me about Victoria Falls.
Victoria Falls is probably, for me, like if I could only go back to one place before I died, it would be Victoria Falls.
Yeah.
I think it's just, I find it very moving, even though it's just water going over a cliff. But it's the whole experience. And I think it goes back to my childhood. Those people of similar age to me, born in 1960, who did the same curriculum, will remember that as part of the curriculum, David Livingstone featured quite prominently. And I remember doing a scrapbook about David Livingstone and Victoria Falls. And it was something that I never thought growing up that I would actually see. So when I first visited Victoria Falls in 2005, I was moved actually by it, because I thought, this is unbelievable, just the sound of it more than anything. And I would actually recommend, if you're going to try and see it from both sides, because they are different. So I think if you can, and I know you have to pay sometimes $50 to go across from one side to the other. There's hotels on both sides of the falls which have direct access And the reason I say it's good to stay in those because it is lovely to see the falls at different time of the day. And if you're staying in either of those hotels, you can walk in at will. And I would say go early morning, go midday, when the heat it's at its highest, and then go in the evening. And you'll experience the falls, throughout with people or without people. But, there's huge potential of areas you can visit from Victoria Falls. You can go to Chobe, or you can go to the Okavango Delta, or you can combine it with South Africa, which is what we did.
Okay, so whereabouts in South Africa did you
Cape Town,
travel?
actually.
Okay.
Yeah, we loved Cape Town. We went along the coast, part of the garden route, and that was after we did Botswana as well. We did Botswana, Zimbabwe, and then we flew down to Cape Town. And that was another of our 4-year.
The big trips.
The
See,
big
your children
trips.
get the best trips.
Absolutely.
I feel like
yeah.
you need to adopt me, and I'll just come on these big 4-year trips with you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you want
it'd be
another
lovely.
sister?
Another one, yeah. Add another one to the party.
Yeah, do it.
But yeah, so I think that was the last big holiday we did, actually.
Okay, so that was the
That
last
was
one.
I can't remember, 2015 or 2016, and then obviously with pandemic we haven't done
Of course.
anything. But
So you're due another big trip.
We're definitely due a big trip, but I don't think it'll be this year
Okay.
for all of us, mainly because we're all quite busy at work. So, it takes some logistics, try to get everybody's leave synchronized from
course.
work. So we'll maybe look at something next year.
What for you at this moment is kind of what's next for your travelling adventures? Is there anything that you haven't done yet that you think I need to do that?
The only place really that I've always thought, well, maybe I should have gone there and I haven't, is Argentina.
Okay.
And I haven't done that. I've done Brazil, but I haven't done Argentina. So that's one place that I would like to go, both to the cities in Buenos Aires, but also as well into the wilds of Argentina. I think it looks beautiful. Some of I'm into nature programs, and and there's obviously some stunning vistas there. So Argentina is one on my list of countries to go.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing your life with us and your travel life, and hopefully we'll have some more travel stories to share with everyone soon. So thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. It's been lovely joining you.
We hope you've enjoyed the latest episode of Passepartout, People and Places. Look out for our next episode, where we'll be talking to more guests about the people and places that have inspired them the most. We'd love to hear your feedback, so please do get in touch. Thanks for listening.